Okay, so that is what we are going to have today. So how we are going to implementation is going to be the thing that we'll be focusing on for today. And there, of course, we will be always referring to what we have discussed yesterday. And there are certain things which we'll know that what is the expectation from these standards. That is all. That is also we're going to see that one. Okay, so today we are going to see certain things on how we are going to leverage the existing ISMS. If we already have 27,001 that is implemented in our organization, how are we going to leverage that so that we can convert that or you can extend that to have our PIMS implemented there. And we'll also see some of the tools there on how to implement PIMS as part of our organization. And roles and responsibilities, we'll definitely will have a discussion on that. Most of us, we already have discussed. So we might have to revisit those things that we have already done yesterday. So the first part of this today is going to be on how you can make use of the ISMS, which is already implemented. As I said yesterday, when you want to have PIMS, the mandatory thing that we have is you need to have an information security system at the base, because on that base only you are going to build your PIMS. So privacy is going to be part of the data that you are going to give access to multiple people. So if that is the case, the primary requirement of that is security of that information. So to ensure security of the information, we need to have ISMS that should be there in our organization. So if that is already going to be there, how are we going to leverage that? That's what we are going to see here. So it is going to be specific to 27,001 and 27,002, because ISMS, when we talk about that, this is a standard across the world where it is used. So we'll be seeing something on how we are going to leverage that. There are certain guidelines that are given as part of 27,701 also on how to do that one. So we are going to refer those areas and see that how practically is it going to be possible for us. And we are going to see that how that is going to be possible to extend each of this control so that it will be meeting the requirement of our PIMS control also. Okay, now if you remember, we were talking those people who have already familiar with, for them this may be trivial one, but the people who are getting this for the first time, when we were actually seeing this 27,001, in 27,001 there are 7 classes which are there, which are implementable classes. So I'm talking about 27,001 2013 version, 2013 version. So there are 7 implementable classes that we have. Each of these classes are to be extended to 27, because you already have certain system that is available there, because there are controls available specific to information system here. This is information system. Now we are going to see that how each of this is going to be extended for the requirement of our privacy management system, because there's not much difference between the privacy and information when you are looking at that in the information perspective, but where it is going to be applicable, the focus is going to be on what level. That is what is going to give the difference. Yeah, yesterday we have seen like what is a clear difference between PIMS and ISMS. ISMS talks about the generic security of the information. So you will be focusing on the assets, information assets, and the information that's going to be residing in those assets. So that is going to be very generic. Most of the things are going to be generic, and the people who are going to be given access, that access is going to be based on what they can do, what sort of activity they are supposed to do. Now, when you are extending that to PIMS, we'll be focusing more on how we are going to filter the data to the next level, because there are certain information which are going to be available only for some people, and there are certain activities it can be done only by some people. So that has to be extended for PIMS. So when we talk about implementing PIMS, there are 2 things that we will be always focusing. One, the process that we need to do. Any request. So when you talk about process in PIMS, main thing is any request that is going to come from the data principal, then we are going to see that what sort of right it is and how we are going to respond to that. That is a process. So for every type of right that is going to be executed by the data principal, we will be having a different process. So we will be focusing on process, and for every process, there are going to be multiple stakeholders, and depending on what the role they have, they are going to play that particular thing. So for that, it should be given. And again, that is simple thing as we already seen as part of our ISMS, because ISMS says you need to have login or you need to have access rights, and user specific access rights should be given, which is already taken as part of our ISMS. So what is more in PIMS? That is where the difference starts. So when you talk about PIMS, within the data, like when you talk about this, we are going to see that some of the slides on that, how we are going to do this one. So if you consider one entity, or you consider that it is going to be for one data principle, for that data, for that particular row or that particular data set, what are the things that I can see and what should not be visible? That is what is going to be defined here. You may be having some 20 or 30 attributes of a particular data principle, but when you are going to process the data for a specific type of process, you will be allowed to view only certain attributes of that. That is what we say minimization. So we want to run the process with the minimum, as minimal data as possible, so that privacy is going to be maintained. So every process that we have as part of PIMS is going to have some objective. When you have an objective, because objective has to be set why we are doing that, and that objective has to be approved. So anything that you do, only when it is going to be approved, either by the data principle or by some other thing, like if it is going to be coming from the government, then that is what is taken as approval. So in such situation, it is going to be a lawful process, and then we are going to execute that one. In such cases also, you will not be given access. We should not be given access for the entire attributes of a particular data principle. So if I'm going to do something with that can be done only of 3 attributes of all 30 attributes that I have, then it is a responsibility of the controller to ensure only those 3 attributes are going to be given to that process, to the processor. Again, as I said yesterday, it is going to be filtering on the row level as well as on the column level. So what we are talking is a column level, where out of 30 attributes, you are going to allow only 3 or 4 attributes which are required to complete that particular process. And again, when you want to do this process, the process can be sometimes for a single data principle, or it can be for selection of principle. It depends on what type of process that you are going to do. In such cases, again, you are going to apply another filter. That means you are going to see that that filter is going to be on the rows that you want to use for that particular process. So when I'm going to, as a processor, when I'm going to get this data from the controller, I will be having the data only sufficient enough to do that particular process in terms of the rows, and also in terms of the columns, that is in terms of the attributes of that particular data principle. That is what we'll have to ensure. That's a difference where we need to bring in. So this is going to be challenging for any application, because when you talk about process, it is very easy. But when you want to implement as part of the software application, it's going to be difficult, because this requirement varies over a period of time, and it varies for every user who is going to do that process. So that is what is going to be there. So when I'm going to consider a simple case that I'm going to say I'm having a data of visits of all my visitors in my portal. So that information I collect. Now I want to take one information from that one. I need to get only those IDs, or only those IPs, or only those visitors who have bought a particular product, particular type of product. Now that filter has to be applied. So when I'm going to use that filter is going to filter on the rows. So I'm going to get certain number of data products. So in this case, I'm going to, as a controller, I will be giving only that data set. Again, what I'm going to do with that one? So I'm going to do, I just want to know like how many people are there. So in that case, count only is required. And then maybe if he needs a mail ID, so I'm going to give only the mail ID. So when the process is going to be done, the process can be like you'll have to generate a mail. That is what we are outsourcing. And the whatever mail IDs that we are going to do, we are going to use that one. So what is expected by the processor is he has to send the alert mail for those mail IDs that are given by me. Now the mail IDs are not going to be a generic one. It is going to be based on a rule, based on what process we do that one. So that is what is we talk about minimization. That has to be, so when you are leveraging this 27001, it is not going to be possible to get this automatically done. So any application, we talk about application here, any software application, when you are going to use that one, or any process that we do. Normally, if it is going to be raw data that you have and you are going to filter it and then do some process, in such case also, you are going to apply this. And when you are going to apply that, it is not going to be a part of the scope of ISMS. That is what is the extension, what we are talking about. That is what we are going to see, how we are going to get that done by extending this one. So these are the 7 classes that are there, which are going to help us in doing that one. We are going to see each of them again now. So, but still there is a difference between how we are going to handle the way that ISMS is handled and the way that we are going to have PIMS. PIM is entirely different because we go detail, we go in depth to see that what data or what attributes that are visible to the processor. Processors, or sometime if you are going to share, you will have to share only those things which are going to be exposed to him or which are going to be visible to him. So that is what is the expectation as part of our PIMS. Now, how we do, we are going to see, as I said, there are 7 things that we have, 7 classes that are there. We are going to see in each class, when I say that if ISMS is already implemented in an organization, now the top management decides that we'll have to go for implementing 27701. Now for each of that, when I want to accommodate this 277 or PIMS, what changes I need to do? What is the approach that I allow to follow? That's what we are going to see here. Now the first one is context of organization. Now let's go back to basics here. Why? In fact, this is there on every ISO standard. You can see that one, context of organization. Why we always start with context of organization. If you have a standard, and if it is so-called as a standard, I'm going to implement in any organization. So why should I talk about or why should I worry about the context of the organization? That is where the input what we get even from ISO itself, that ISO says, even though the ISO standards are called as standards, they are not standard. You will have to treat them as a framework. So it is a bigger framework. And what you need to do is you need to see what type of processes that are there in our organization. And then you see that how these processes can be made sync to the framework that you have. Framework is going to be applicable for any type of organization. So the organization, if that is going to be a standard in that way, what we think, so implementation is going to be same. So when I implement in one organization, suppose if I'm going to implement ISMS in one organization, if I'm done with that, so same thing I'm going to repeat everywhere. It's going to be as simple as that, but that is not happening. Every company you go, every organization you go, when you're going for implementing ISMS or any standard, every time it is going to be unique one. That uniqueness is going to be based on the context of the organization. Context is the environment that is there, the process that is specific to the organization, and the set of stakeholders who are going to form that organization. Those things are there. You need to think in the overall way, holistic way, and how this organization, you will have to, what type of business it does, what is the business rules that are there, and who are the stakeholders, and what are their needs and expectations. That is what we see here in the context of the organization. So when I'm going to look, if I have already ISMS here, when I'm going to look for this context of organization, I will be looking in the ISMS perspective alone. So I will not be bothered about privacy. So if it is going to be ISMS, there is no concept of data principle. I don't have to worry about it. As long as it is going to be data information, it has to be secured. Oh, I have a system to secure that. I don't have to worry that what individual is going to ask from me, because there is no question that individual is going to ask from, if that is not part of our scope of the ISMS. But when we are moving to PIMS, that is the thing. In PIMS, we need that one. Now, that is the thing. Like when you are talking about this context of organization, first you need to understand the context. So when you are going to understand the context, we are going to focus on those requirements that are specific to privacy. So it can be a legislation, it can be regulation acts that are going to be there. Like if I'm going to run an organization from any Asian country where I'll be doing business with, say, any European country, so regulation is there, GDPR. So I need to see that how GDPR is going to be applicable for that. So I need to look in that perspective. So that is what is the first thing that I'll have to look in, if context. So when I'm going to say that this is what is there, what are the things that are there, what legislations are there, what regulations are there, what are the judicial decisions that I'll have to go for? Because this is one thing which is very particular when we talk about PIMS, because anything that we fail, when you are not meeting the regulation, or when there is a complaint that is going to come from the data principle that we have missed something, missed the privacy, then in that case, there are going to be heavy penalties that are going to be there. So that's going to be a judicial decision what we are going to face. So how these things are going to have an effect on my process. So I need to know that. Unless I know what is there, I will not be in a position to address that as part of my process, because I started defining the process for my PIMS. So I need to understand what are those things, what are those external things which are going to have an effect on this, or how they are going to influence the way that I'm going to have my PMS implemented in my organization. So I'm going to look for this, all these things, governance and management. Hope I know the difference between governance and management, and other contractual requirements. Now, the contractual requirements are going to be different. If it is going to be just for ISMS, the contractual requirements are different. If it is going to be for privacy, then the requirements are going to be different. So if it is going to be just for information security, contractually, every customer of us is going to have a clause added as part of the contract saying that his information, whatever information that he is going to share with us, should be protected as long as it is going to be processed in our organization. That is what is going to be part of our contractual requirement. If it is going to be ISMS, when in case of PIMS, it is going to be extended. He's going to say that it is not only that you are going to be addressing the contractual requirement of me as a company. I am already bound to some contractual obligation to all the data principles there. So anything that is going to be there, that is going to be pushed here. So that is how the processor, even as a processor also, we will be having certain obligations that we'll have to do. So that is what we talk about the contractual requirement. It can be either with the supplier, or if we are going to work as a processor, in either way, as a controller and as a processor, you will be having certain requirements which you are going to transfer, that is going to be transferred from the controller to the processors and the second level processors. And that is what is going to be part of the contractual requirements. So all these things are going to be listed. And when we talk about this, it has to be done in every process that we have, because we may be having a contractual requirement for business, but at the same time, when you are going for network, there is going to be another contractual requirement. So network management, or if you are going to have a cloud, you are going to use a cloud as part of that, there will be another contractual requirement. So, or if you are going to outsource again, so you have a next level sub-vendor is there. In that case, how are you going to have your, so contracts are going to be different depending on how big your operations are. So that is why you need to clearly understand what are the things that are liable, what are the things that I allow to that allow to address with respect to PMS. The same thing that we would have done for ISMS, but the context is something that we thought of only the information security. Now we'll have to look for PIMS. That is a difference. That is where you are going to extend this for, or extend this to meet the PMS requirements also. So when you are going to understand this, or the scope is going to be extended now. Now scope is not only covering only the information security, you are also going to have this privacy related one. That is one part of it. The other thing what we are going to see is when you are going to do this analysis, now all these things that we have, for everything that we call here, there is going to be one person who is going to be owning that one. So there is going to be a owner for each of this. When I say that it's going to be a regulation, there is going to be a owner. Government is going to be a owner for that. Judicial decision, there is going to be a owner. A contractual requirement, there are going to be multiple owners. So I need to understand each of those owners. And that is what we call as an interested party. Now, this is a beautiful term that you can get from ISO. You have a parallel term also for this one, which is a stakeholder. But stakeholder, as the name suggests, though it says that it prefers, actually ISO prefers that we should use interested parties. The reason for that is the term that we use for stakeholder, that means it refers to those who have a stake in our organization, or at least in the project. So, but we want to have a broader coverage. That's why we have this one. It has a wider coverage. Like you have this interested party, which means it is going to cover others also. I'll give a simple scenario. Now, if I'm going to have my organization to be certified for, say, 27701. Now, then if I'm certified, then ISO as an organization is going to be one of the interested parties. Now, it is not a stakeholder. ISO is not bothered about what profit I'm doing in my organization, but definitely it is an interested party and it has certain needs and expectations. As long as you want your process to be certified, then you need to have the standard. You need to sync your processes with respect to the standard that I give. That is what is a need or expectation that is going to be there from this interested party. Like this, there are going to be there are going to be hundreds of interested party, and each of them, they will be having different needs and expectation, which are specific to privacy. So ideally, this interested party, the primary interested party is always going to be the customer. So customer is a primary interested party, and employees, everyone is going to be part of this. And we need to first identify the interested parties. And for each of the interested parties, you're also going to see with respect to privacy, what are the needs they have. So when I'm going to work as a processor, then the controller is going to be one of my interested party. Then I'm going to ask him what are the things that he is expecting. So he's going to give some set of instruction to me, then I'll have to follow that. So if I don't identify interested party, then I'll never know what they are looking for. If I have this one, if it is not, or if this needs and expectations are incomplete, then I will not be addressing those things as part of my process. Because the very purpose why we are collecting this information, needs and expectation, because we want this to be collected, identified, collected, so that all these things, needs and expectation, will be addressed as part of my PIMS. Because I need to do that somewhere in some process, one process or multiple processes, I need to address this so that these things are going to be fulfilled, because that is what is the expectation from this interested party. So that is what is the context what we talk about. Collectively, we need to see who are all going to be influencing the way that I am going to design my PIMS, and what are those things that they will be looking for. So for them, I need to fulfill them. So that is what I'm going to look here. Again, this is going to be applicable for ISMS also, but the context is something different. That is what is there. The context is with respect to information security, what each of these interested parties are going to ask for. Now, the interested parties may change. Sometimes there may be same, but when you are going for privacy, there may be a different set of people who will be there. There may be some people who are going to be there in both, but set of interested parties will be different from what we have for information security standard. So that is what is the first thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to understand the context, then I'm going to have list of all interested parties with their needs and expectation. With this, I'm going to see the business process. So because ultimately, if I'm going to have this PIMS, this is not going to be implemented as a standalone solution. It's not going to be a parallel activity. Any process that I'm going to make, any process that I'm going to define, that should be tightly integrated into the business process. So I need to understand the process, what type of processes that we have. That is what we are going to see more in the second part of the session, how we are going to identify the areas where privacy is there, or privacy is expected, data privacy is expected. So we need to understand the business process, and in each of the business process, what are the privacy related requirements are there, we need to identify. And when we identify that, along with this needs of expectation, that is what is going to give scope for implementing PIMS, which is going to give the entire scope. Now, there are certain things which should be already there as part of that. By default, we would have given that one. So we are going to find that one, and we are going to define that scope. Because as I said yesterday, when you are going for a project, you are going to manage a project, because implementing PIMS is a project management. As a lead, the person who is going to implement PIMS is going to work as a project manager. So when you want to do a project management, the first thing that you are going to do is you need to have a plan for that. So when you want to have a plan for this, what you need to know is you need to know what is the scope. Only when you know the scope, you will be in a position to size it. You will be in a position to estimate it. Only when you estimate, you will be in a position to plan it. That is why at this point of time, like in context of organization, you are trying to understand the context of the organization by various things that are going to be influencing the way that PIMS is going to be implemented. Identify the interested parties, their needs and expectation. The second part is you are going to identify the business processes, and especially the privacy related requirement in each of the activities that we have. The combination of that is going to be addressed as part of our process. That is what we are going to find, and that is what we define as scope. That scope is going to be the PIMS scope. So once you define the scope, then we should be in a position to estimate how much time it is going to take. And once you are done with that, then we will also know that what are the things that how much it is going to, how long it is going to be there, what resources that are there. So you are going to talk about the entire project management plan for that. That is entirely a different track here. But unless you have a scope defined, you will not be in a position to estimate that. If you do not estimate, you will not be in a position to implement that. That is where this context of organization is going to be there. And though the way that is explained is going to be similar, the way that you are going to get the meaning for PIMS is going to be entirely different. That way you are going to do that one. So once you are done with that, then we are coming to the next part of that, which is going to be leadership. Again, go back to basics. This leadership, if you are familiar, you have been working with the ISO standard for quite some time. This was not there earlier in the older versions of ISO, some 7-8 years back. The concept of leadership was not there. There was somebody called management representative, and that person, that role was doing everything on a periodical basis. That role was actually reporting things to management. Now, and that a lot of problems were there because there is no direct involvement from the management. That is why the gap was felt by all the implementers and all organizations. It was felt by ISO also. That's why you have this leadership added here. Now, it is going to be always from the leadership. So when I'm going to start any implementation or anything that I'm going to do, any of the ISO standard, leadership is always going to be there. They are the people who are going to own the whole activity of getting PIMS implemented. They are the people who are going to be accountable for that. That is what you see as part of this fight. Commitment is always, yesterday we have seen, when you are going to have a policy, at the policy itself, they are going to give their commitment. So the commitment has to be established there as part of the policy itself. That is what we are looking for. So when the commitment is going to happen from the top management, generally it is going to flow down to the middle layer, and also it is going to flow down to the rest of the employees, so that you will see the contribution from every employee. So that is always going to be top-down approach. That is working better because now the owners for entire implementation of PIMS is always with the leadership. So whatever we do here, rest of the things that we do, they are all going to be established by leadership, and they are going to run that show. And again, as I said yesterday, there is a difference between accountability and responsibility. Accountability of implementing PIMS is always with the leadership, whereas the responsibility is going to be pushed down. So you will be having a team form. That's why you have this class here, organization roles and responsibilities. So you are going to define certain roles, because every activity cannot be done by leadership. That is not their primary task. Though they are going to be accountable for that, the responsibilities that are there that are going to be thrown down, pushed down, so that they will be having a team, and that team is going to take care of all the activities. That is where you are going to define. When we talk about organization here, this is a team that is created for implementing and maintaining PIMS. So you are going to define the role. You're also going to define responsibilities for each of the role and the authorities. Yesterday, we have seen what is that. There is segregation is also there as part of that. Why segregation is important? When you have a role is going to be common. So when there is a role, there are going to be people who are going to be attached to that role. So I'm going to have a person, and then I'm going to map that person individual to that role. So if as long as it is going to be mapped with only one person at a time, then there will not be confusion. If there are going to be multiple people linked or mapped to the same role, then the responsibilities, there is going to be a big confusion. Who has to hold what? That problem will be there. So to remove that, what we are trying to do here is, that confusion has to be removed. So the only way to do that one is how we are going to segregate. We did talk about that on segregation, how it can be done. Either you are going to apply the authority, because authority is the decision-making level. So sometimes we will use authority to segregate the responsibilities, or there are different ways by which you will be in a position to segregate the responsibilities. That's how each person will be owning something. Even yesterday, we have seen every process or every information asset that we have should be having a owner. If there is no owner for a process, then that process is going to be, nobody is going to take care of that, and it is going, when from problem comes, nobody is going to attend that. That is what we should be very clear. Every process that we are going to define, there should be a owner for that, and that is his responsibility to ensure that things are going in a right way. So that is what is organization roles, responsibilities, authorities, what we talk about. Again, ISMS, there is already a role. ISMS lead will be there. But now when we go for PIMS, you need to have a PIMS role. As I said earlier, it is not necessary that you need to have two different persons. A role is something different. Designation is something different. A person who is going to play the role is going to be something different. So I may be a quality manager or compliance manager. That is my designation. I may be playing the role of ISMS lead as well as PIMS lead. So both roles are played by me. That is how it has to be. Sometimes, and again, when you are going to have this role, there should not be confusion in that one. The role should not. If they are going to answerable to each other, then you cannot play the same role. Both the roles you cannot play. That is also going to be there. That is what we see as roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Policy, we did talk about that yesterday, how we have seen that we spent a lot of time on understanding the policy, because policy is actually building the gap. It is from the vision to the objectives, to the employee level. We are trying to pull the thread and then take it to the employee level, get that implemented, and then you are going to roll it up and then see that whether we are going towards in the direction what the vision is talking about. So that is what is a policy all about. So you have a policy. Every management system will be having a policy. In an organization, if you are going to have quality management system, information management system, and privacy information management system, these are the three management system you have. All three will be having individual policy, because each one is going to have different objective. Those objectives and commitments are going to be part of our policy statement. So you are going to define that. As I said yesterday, policy is going to be the root of all. On one side, you are going to get all the processes, procedures to be derived from that policy. On the other side, you are going to break it down into objectives. From the objectives, you are going to make it as other measures and other things. So it is going to be root for the entire PIMS that you want to build as part of our organization. That's what we have as part of leadership. Now, when you move to the next one, you have planning. Here again, there is going to be a big change. Though the process is going to be more or less same, because there are two things that we'll be doing here. The first one is risk and opportunities. In fact, yesterday somebody was asking about opportunities also. Risk and opportunities both are same. Let me put it this way. So now, if you philosophically, if you see the whole universe, if you see that it is nothing else but cause, and you have for every cause, there are going to be certain effects. Cause and effect is the only thing. You see anything in this universe, there is a cause, and because of that, there are certain effects that are happening. And every effect is going to become cause of its own, and then by in its turn, it is going to create some cause. So this cause and effect is going to be a continual activity which goes on, it continues, and nothing else is there in the whole universe. So if that is a philosophy, the same philosophy is going to be applied on risk and opportunities also. When the effect that is going to be there, if that effect is going to be beneficial to me, I'm going to call that as an opportunity. When an effect is going to be coming between my target, I'm going to call that as a negative risk. So risk is a negative one, opportunity is a positive one. I'll give an example. Suppose it is raining. It starts raining on a working day. So for a salesman, it's raining, he cannot go out. So for him, it is a risk, because he cannot go out and he is going to lose his target for that day. For him, that is a risk. That is a negative risk. But for the agriculturist, it is an opportunity, because it is raining. He is going to get some benefit of that. Now, in this one, the effect is neutral. That is what is the thing. That is the reason why we talk about risk and opportunities always together. The reason is it is only the effect. It's a neutral activity. So that effect is always neutral. Now, with our perception, we are going to look at that. If it is going to be beneficial to me, I'm going to call it opportunity. If it is going to come in between my target, if it is not allowing me to meet my target, I'm going to call that as risk. That's why wherever you have this, that is there everywhere, wherever we talk about risk, we always talk about opportunity, because both are same. Only the effect is, or the way that we are going to perceive is going to be different. So that's a story on risk and opportunities. So anything that we do, anything that we discuss on risk is going to be applicable for opportunities. Only thing is, it is in a positive way. Now, why should we think about risk? Because we just started, right? When you look at this one, we just understood the organization, and then we just have commitment from the leadership, and we have a team. Then as part of the plan, why we are thinking about risk there. In fact, we did talk about that yesterday. One of the things that ISO is always expecting is how we are building your process. So there are 3 steps. We did spend some time on that. That is, process is always going to be person-based process. That's a very low level one. Then when you are going to implement some standard process, then we are going to shift it to process-based approach. Now you are moving from person-based approach to process-based approach. And the third level, what we have is risk-based approach. That is where you are doing here. So when I'm going to go for planning, what I plan, I want to plan all the processes. What are the processes? The business processes are already here. I have a set of business processes I have already listed here. I know that what are the expectations that are there for every interested party that I have. Now, what I'm going to do here as part of this, I'm going to, for every business process that I have, I'm going to see what type of risks that are there with respect to privacy. So every business process that is there, it is going to be throughout the life cycle, all the processes, I'm going to pick one by one and see what are those risks, privacy related risks I'm going to identify. Now, why should I identify now? Because the process that I'm going to plan later, that is going to be risk-based approach, which means while I'm defining the project, the particular process itself, I'll be talking about the risk in that, and I'll also be having mitigation as part of that. So my process, that is my PIMS, which I'm going to define, will be risk-based one, which means it will always be already including the risk and along with the mitigation activity for each of them. That's why I'm going to identify the risks that are there as part of my risk. Again, there's risk. When we talk about risk here, when we are going to apply for PIMS, we are going to see only the risks that are related to privacy. So that is how we are going to do that. The another part that we'll have to add here, which is going to be extension of 27001, is the SOA. If you are already familiar with 27001, the one of the things, if you have done anytime, if you have conducted an audit or faced an audit, one of the things that you should be already seen that one is always the audit will start with the SOA. So this SOA is always going to be the one which talks about what are the processes that we have, what are the controls that I have in my organization. So it is statement of applicability. You have those 114 controls that are there in 27002. Out of this, which are the controls that are going to be applicable to me in my organization? That is what is going to be established as part of the SOA. As an auditor, when I'm going to start my audit, I will first see this SOA and see that is there any just exceptions that are there. If the exception is given there, then I need to ask for the justification for that. If the justification is meaningful, I'm going to take it. Otherwise, as an auditor, I'm going to raise a non-conformance for that also. That is what is SOA, what we talk about. Now, the SOA is going to be on the controls. So for information security, you have those only 114 controls. For this, we will be looking those annexures. You remember that we have seen certain extra controls, objectives and controls. Yesterday, there are 2 controls that are there, annexures A and B. One for the controller specific controls. The other one is processor specific controls. For these 2, I'm going to see that what is the SOA for that one. So the SOA for PIMS is always going to be having the controls that are specific to this controller and processor. Of course, when I'm going to see that information security, those 114 controls will be there as part of that. So SOA is also going to increase. In fact, if you see on the popular ISO standards that we have, more documentation is required on information security. The reason for that is you have more processes and risks are more in this one. And when we are going to extend that to get PIMS, it is going to be much more. So you need to have more documentation, more processes that are going to be there. So as part of the plan, what you are going to do is you are going to identify the risk. For that, you are going to set the so you need to identify the privacy related risk, and then you are also going to assess them. You're going to see that later as part of that. So that is the action here. When we say risk, we are also going to consider opportunities as part of that. The reason for that is both are same, only the perception is different. The way that we are going to look at that, if it is going to be beneficial or not, we are going to name it in a different way. The second part of that of planning 6.2 is on objectives. We did talk about in the previous one, we did talk about the policy. Policy is a descriptive one. So if it is going to be a descriptive one, I will after some time, say after 6 months, if I want to see whether I have achieved something or not, I will not be in a position to say what is the basis, because it is going to be more of a descriptive one. It's going to be more of a qualitative nature. So the only way to beat that is you need to have multiple objectives. These objectives are going to be derived from that one, and each of them are going to be measurable and for a specific time period. So that is what we are going to have. Again, when we talk about objective here, these objectives are specific to PIMS, because there will be objectives which are for every management system. There are certain objectives that will be done. And when, as we were talking about yesterday, when you are going to have the, when you are going to push it down to the employee level, there are going to be multiple objectives that will be pushed down. There are few which are going to be pushed down from the quality. There are few from the information system. Now, when you're going to implement this privacy management system, there are also certain objectives are going to be pushed on, because at least 70% of the things that we have, the objectives of the activities or processes that we have in any management system, that is going to be done with the contribution from the employee at various levels. So there are very limited thing where you are going to do at the team level or at the higher level. That is also going to have some effort that will be coming from individual employees. So everything that's going to be pushed down to the employee level KPI. So the KPIs, what we are going to define, are going to be from the objective that you are going to set. So these objectives are going to be privacy related objectives, which some of them, at least 70% of them, you are going to push it down. There are certain objectives which will be there for departments, certain objectives which will be there for people managers, depending on how do you want to do. Like I can give you an example. Suppose you want to have innovation. You at the beginning of the year, you set an objective that suppose you have 3 departments. So you at the end of the year, every department should have implemented effectively. That's the thing, effectively implemented at least 2 innovations on privacy on any of the processes that they are taking. So if that is what is going to be the objective set, now that is going to be owned by department. Of course, to get that done, they will be getting that contribution from the individual employees. So individual employees are also going to contribute. But if you consider another different type of objective, now I set an objective that every employee of this organization should have completed 5 hours of training related to privacy in the whole year. That is my objective. Now this 5 hours is going to be for every individual. So this is going to be pushed down to the individual employee. So there are at times where you are going to push it down at the same level. Sometimes you are going to give it to the team level and they are going to get it done. So there are different ways of giving the objectives here. When you're going to push it down, there are different ways that you can handle that one. That's what we talk about objectives here. Now, objectives, again, we say when you have a system, this PIMS system is not going to be a parallel one. It's not going to be something where 2-3 guys are sitting in a room corner of the office and every month they will be throwing some reports and the management will be looking that. That's not the case, because this has to be whatever process that we define as part of the PIMS should be integrated tightly into the business process. So that is why when you are going to define the objectives, these objectives will be having a plan. For every objective, just this is what you want, but how are you going to get that one? You need to have a plan. And these plans should be integrated into the business process. This is what we are expecting here as part of this planning. So there are 2 things here. You are going to define the risk so that this risk and opportunities are going to help us in having or in defining our process in a complete sense, so that the process that we are going to define will be after considering all the risks along with the mitigation activities. The other part is now you are setting targets. When you are setting targets, to reach that target, you are also going to have plan, and these plans are going to be pushed down to business units, and that is going to be integrated into their business. Because any of the activity that we do, privacy activity, the process, the compliance team is not going to do. That is also one of the things most of us will get confused. What is the difference between a quality manager and a compliance manager? Quality compliance, quality assurance, quality control, and compliance. These 3 are entirely different. Whenever we talk about quality control or quality assurance activity is one activity where you will be doing when the process is done, to ensure once the process is over, when the deliverable is going to come, we ensure that the deliverable will be meeting what is expected in that one. That is what it is. It is going to assure you, the activity that you do is going to assure you that the deliverable which is going to come out of this particular activity will be meeting the requirement. So that is always a preventive measure. Whereas when we talk about quality control activity, as name suggests, it is going to control. So once the deliverable is out, so any quality control activity you will be doing on the deliverable. So when the software is ready, it is developed, you are going to conduct a testing. So when you are conducting a testing, software testing is a quality control activity. So any control activity, if you see, it is done on the deliverable. Now these two are going to be done by functions, whichever domain it is. If it is going to be on the development, if it is going to be on HR, they are going to take care of that, because everywhere quality is going to be there and control is also going to be there. Now the third thing that has come here is a compliance part of that. Compliance is going to set the rules on the top, and they are not going to be responsible for that. They need to set the process, and then they are going to have some objective set. Plans are going to be defined, and these plans are going to be pushed to or integrated into the business process, and the business owner has to you will be having the responsibility of getting it implemented. So the compliance team, which is going to be there, which normally when we talk about PIMS team, that is going to be a compliance team. They will not be working on each of that. They are only overseeing the things. So they will be seeing that wherever there is a non-conformance, they are going to see what is a plan, what is a problem there, and if required, they are going to change the process and get it done. So implementation is always going to be done by the business processes. That is what we are going to implement as part of this PIMS. So that's going to be the second part of that. The third part is going to be support. Now, what do you mean by support? So any organization will be having certain output deliverable. So any unit within the organization which is going to get that deliverable out, we call that as operation, right? When operation team or manufacturing. So if it is going to be a manufacturing team, the production team is always going to be considered operation. If you are running a service-based organization, so the team that is going to do the service, that's going to be called as operation. Like when you take the case of IT team, the operation team is always going to be the people who do the service, IT services. So that is what is any department or any function within the organization which is actually directly involved in the deliverable, we call that as operation. All the other units are going to be considered as support. They are supporting it. So you can have HR or procurement. These things are going to be considered as support unit. But we need to have these things. They are going to help us also, because that is where we have all these things done. So here in this class 7, we are going to see those things that we are expecting from support organization. It can be plenty. There are multiple things that our legal team is there, finance team is there, marketing, sales, all these things are going to come as part of the support. Now, how do we manage this? How they are going to be responsible, the way that we are going to implement PIMS? Again, as I said already, when we have PIMS team, the organization that we are going to have here, this organization, what we talk about, this is the PIMS team, which is a compliance team. Now, when it is going to be compliance team, when we say that we are going to integrate the plans here as part of the business process, they are not the owners of that. They are only overseeing that. So in fact, it is a function which is going to do that. If it is going to be related to HR, I'm going to push it to HR process. If it is going to be related to procurement, I'm going to push it to the procurement process. So depending on where it is going to be applicable, the plans are going to be inbuilt into the existing business processes. And as a compliance team, I'll be overseeing that and to ensure that the things are going in a right direction. That's what I'm going to do. Now, when it comes to support, this is the thing that we are going to do that one. What are the things that we are going to do that one? When you say support, there are two things which you say resources. First one, we talk about resources. There are two types, human resources and other resources. Human resources will come later. Whenever you have there are a lot of other resources that are there. So resources can be physical resources or virtual resources. Now there's a two categorizations that we have. So you are going to identify those resources which are required for implementing PIMS and maintaining PIMS. So something like you need, like whenever you have a software, now we have a software and we want to have PIMS implemented as part of that. So, and if you are having an IT setup, we need to have log files generated for that, because these log files are going to be asset for us. These are resources for our PIMS operations. So if something goes wrong, I'm going to look into that log file and then see. So the auditing feature of any software application is going to ensure that it will keep track of who has done what. So we will be having certain things that are there which are going to be virtual, and sometimes we'll also be having physical things like that. So CCTV and monitoring other devices. So we are going to find suitable detecting and monitoring equipment that are going to be there, which are required for implementing PIMS. So it's going to be various things. Most of the things, like even if you want to have, like if it is going to be ISMS, your firewall is going to be one of the resource that you have. That's a logical resource, virtual resource. So resources are going to be identified for, even if the software that you use was primarily for our PIMS, then that is going to be part of our resource. You're going to identify the resource and you need to know that how we are going to maintain them. That's one part of that. The second part of that is going to be human resource. When you come to human resource, now why we think about human resource? The reason is, again, go back to what we talked yesterday when we started our session. Anything that we call as a system, when you say it is going to be a quality management system or ISMS or privacy information management system, when you say system, system is going to be combination of people, process, and infrastructure. So when we say support, all these things are going to be considered. So when you say resource, this is the infrastructure related thing. When you say competence, that is going to be related to people. So and process, we have already seen, we are going to see that process also earlier. So here, people are going to be, we need to ensure that people are there with the required skill set. And that is where we are looking for competence. So when you talk about competence, there are 2-3 things that are going to be associated with that. Normally, if you extend this one, now competence that are required for privacy, that is what is the thing. When I'm going to implement privacy management system, I'm going to train the people. So first, I think what are the skills that are required? If I'm going to have a privacy management system lead, now for him, I need to decide what is going to be the job description. So for any person who is going to be there, you should be having at least 20 years of, say, 15 years or 10 years of experience in this area. You should have already done this privacy management system, or you should have at least have some degree qualification. So that is what job description is one thing. Along with that, what are the skills that I'm looking for in them? So that is what is going to be the competence. If it is not there, then we will be conducting training and then ensure that we will be training them so that they will be meeting the requirement what we have. So training is also going to be part of the competence. Competence is any person who is going to have a skill. Now that skill is of what level? That is what is going to be defined by the competence. So that is what we are going to do here, and then train the resources with the expected PIM skill. That is the thing what we are, because we need to have people who knows what is PIMS, what is the privacy, and then if it is a new area, then we are going to keep training them. So things are going to keep changing. Today I may be using a particular type of media. Tomorrow suddenly there is going to be a new media comes, and then I need to check as a team, as a privacy management team, I need to check whether if I'm going to introduce this particular media as part of my infrastructure, whether that is going to create any harm for my privacy. So that skill we'll have to learn. So there are going to be always need for requirement. That is also one of the things that PIMS lead will be always looking for. Always he'll be creating, or always he'll be looking for need for training. And based on the need, he's going to conduct the training and get the things done. This is an ongoing process, what we'll be having. And this training is going to be of different levels, depending on whom do you want to train and what level you want to do. That is the second part of that. The third part is going to be applicable for every, because one of the things that we have seen in the initial one is if you want to go for implementing any management system, say privacy management system, that's going to be possible only when you are going to get contribution from individual employees. Unless every employee, see, if none of them are going to contribute, you can have some policy, you can have some process, everything there in a written way, but it is not going to yield the result what you are looking for. So how we are going to make the people to contribute? The only way is you need to make them to aware what is expected from them. So as part of the awareness, this is also sort of thing. There is a difference between training and awareness. Normally, when we talk about awareness, we always say awareness sessions, because the major difference between training and awareness is when I am going to be trained, there is an expectation that is there. This training is going to impart certain skills at the end of the training, and I should be getting some competence level for each of the skills that are there. And at the end, when I'm done with the training, I'm expected to deliver based on the new skills that I've learned here. That is what is the expectation when I say it is a training. Whereas when you talk about awareness, it is only the knowledge that you are going to gain. So that is a difference, major difference between these two. Awareness to be given for every employee so that they will know what is the policy, why we go for PII, why it is needed as an organization, why organization needs a management system for managing the privacy, data privacy. And as an individual, what is that is going to give to me? So, and as an individual, what should I contribute to that? So if I don't do that, what are the problems that as an individual I'm going to face, as an organization it is going to face? So this information has to be shared, and that is what is going to be done by conducting awareness sessions. So this has to happen on a periodic way, like at least once in 6 months. If that is not possible, at least once in a year, you need to conduct that. So this is an opportunity for the organization to share the ideas that they have done, or the things that have been implemented as part of the PIMS, and also they are going to get some feedback, and they are also going to get ideas from employees. That is what is awareness, what we talk about. This should be there. We need to maintain records for these awareness as well as training programs that we have conducted. This is mandatory. Now the question comes, I am interested only in data privacy. Now, why should I bother about training and awareness? Is it not part of HR? That's a question will come. Yes, it is. It is. As a owner, HR is going to be the owner of the process. But even if it is going to be the owner, what skill that is required for privacy management? Only we know. As a privacy team, only we will know. So we are the people who will have to define what skill is there. And when the person is going to come, whether this person is suitable for this role or not, only we can decide. So we will be using what is the process that is available as part of the HR, but what is required for that, that is what we are going to do. So when I say that I'm going to have a job description is essential. That is there as part of the framework that HR has. But what should be part of the job description? What are the qualifications? What are the skills that is required for the people who are going to be part of this PIMS team? That has to be decided only by us. That is where competence and awareness, all these things are there as part of this one. Though the process is going to be owned by HR, it is going to be triggered by us. We are the one who are going to define that, and we are the users of that one. We have the responsibility. They own that. They are the people who are accountable for that. Then communication is this thing where anything that you do, you need to communicate only, then people will know. Communication has two-way things that are there. Before you do anything, you are going to communicate to let all the stakeholders know that you are going to do this one now. And once the activity gets over, you are going to give the result to everyone so that people will know that these are the results that are there for all stakeholders. Documented information as per ISO, everything has to be documented. So our PIMS, whatever process that we have, that is what we get from 5, right? We are defining the in 4, we are understanding this and we are understanding this. These two are going to be documented here. What we have is a PIMS, which is established, implemented, maintained, and continually improved. This whole thing has to be documented. And that is what we expect. Every process in ISO should be documented. So PIMS should also be documented. So you'll be having a different set of documents. But one thing, when you are going to co-implement ISMS and PIMS, there are common areas where process is going to be same. So only the way that you are going to interpret will be different. So processes you can have like documentation process, communication plan, awareness sessions, competence. These things are the way that you are going to conduct this thing. Process is going to be same. Only the operation will be different. That way you can minimize your job. That's why one of the reasons, like I think yesterday also I was talking about this structure that we have 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a common structure across multiple standard that we have. So when I'm going to have multiple standards implemented in my organization, most of the thing, all popular standard, they follow the standard now. Now, any new standard come, they ensure that they follow this one. Now, the thing is, if I'm going to have same structure, it is easy for me to cross-refer. So this is going to be same here. That is also going to be same in QMS. That is also going to be same in other areas. That is the way that I'm going to do, so that my job is going to be easier. Wherever it is going to be, processes are going to be easier, so that I can use for different management systems. That is one of the benefit that we have when you go for multiple management systems implemented. But this is going to be applicable only for ISO management systems. So next one is the operation. Now, as I said, this is a support we talk about. So operation is the one which is going to provide the deliver directly responsible for deliverables. Now in this one, as we have seen earlier, you have plan, same thing, plan, you have a plan and you are going to execute based on the plan. and then there is always going to be risk there. So you'll be having monitoring and control. So plan, execution, then you will have monitoring and control that has to be established for every process that you are going to define. These processes are going to be, once you have defined the processes, these are going to be integrated into the business processes. That's how we are going to do. And another thing, what you see here is, if you look at this, the way that is given, this you can notice in other standards also. If you are not familiar, let me spend 2-3 minutes on that. Operation is nothing but what you have done as part of the plan. So everything that you do here we have identified. We just plan to do risk and opportunities. We do analysis of risk, and then we plan to have objectives and plan to and have a plan to implement these objectives. So here we only plan. So implementation of the plan is going to be here. So that is why if you see here this operational planning and control, then you will be having same thing. You are going to, whatever planned there in 6.1 and 6.2, that is what you are going to implement here. Now this operation, when we say that risk assessment, one of the things that we have is in all the other standards other than 27001, the operation is the one where it is going to vary most of the thing, because the operation varies. If it is going to be 14,000, if it is going to be environment, operation is going to be different. If it is going to be quality, operation is going to be different. Now, only on all the other standard, it is not explained. You have this and you'll have to follow that. You'll have to have your own way of defining these things. But for 27001, this operation, we talk about the risk here. That is that 27001 itself is extended as 27002, where they have listed out all the risks that are possible. So every objective that is there as part of this 27002, along with the with those 114 controls that are there, they are the way by which you can control the possible risks that are there. For all known risks, you have those controls that are available, generic way. So that is there. So it is easy for us to, when you want to implement operation here, you are going to refer 27002 and then do that one. Same thing we are going to do here. Using the 27002, we are going to identify the controls, and for every control, we will be having a plan, and then the way that we are going to control it, monitor it, that's going to be there for every control. What controls are there? Then ISO is going to help us to identify that. So you're going to see that applicability of that. That's why we have statement of applicability here. So the first thing what we do is, once we identify the risk, then we know what are the controls that are going to be applicable. Then we are deciding SOA, statement of applicability here. That statement of applicability is going to be the starting point, because it is going to talk about all the controls that are going to be applicable for this organization. So privacy management, you will be having another set of controls here that is also going to be part of this SOA. And this plan is going to be implemented here. So when you are going to implement this, you are not going to look only this. This is for one single control. So if you have one single objective, how are we going to plan for it? How are we going to monitor? How are you going to control? You are going to define a plan. And what are those things that are there? You are going to refer to 27002 or how we are going to use the 27002. Yesterday we have seen how we are going to, we will be seeing some of the thing also today, how we are extending that to 27701. That is what we'll be doing here as part of the operation. So that is where we have. And when we talk about this risk, each is going to be a risk, because information security management system is itself is a risk management system, because everything what you see here is only a specific type of risk. So you will be having the entire life cycle of risk management, correct? So in this risk management, we did spend some few minutes on risk management yesterday. So there are 4 phases in risk management. The first 3 phases are combined and we call that as a risk assessment. And the last one is a risk treatment. Now risk assessment has 3 things as part of that. You are going to identify the risk, you are going to analyze the risk, and you are going to evaluate the risk. So once you evaluate, then you will be in a position to prioritize that. Based on the priority, you are going to take a decision to go for defining a treatment plan for each of them. So when it is going to be risk treatment, you are, for every risk that you have decided that we'll be having a plan, you will be having a separate risk treatment plan. So every risk that we are going to talk here is going to be risk related to privacy. So that is what type of risk you are going to refer to the controls, and for every control there are going to be multiple risks. So that we will see in 1 or 2 slides later. So that is what is operation, what we talk about. Now, this is an interesting thing that has come as part of ISO, which is there for some time. But the way that is given is also interesting. When you look at this performance evaluation. So as for ISO standard, When we talk about performance, it is only the process performance. We are interested in process performance here. So you will have to evaluate. Now, when you are going to see whether we are progressing or not, whether we are performing or not as a system, is our system performing or not, how you will evaluate that. So there are different ways of doing that. So these are 3 different ways by which you can evaluate the performance of your processes. Now, the focus itself is entirely different. That's why there are 3 things that are there. So the first one is you are focusing on the processes. So you are going to process, you are going to identify the process, and then for every process, you are going to identify a measure. And once you have identified a measure, you are also going to identify a way to monitor it, and then you are going to fix a target and see whether we are meeting the target or not on a periodical basis. And then when you are going to collect this measure for a long term, so you are going to analyze that, and that information you are going to see whether there are any opportunities there for improvement. So this is done for processes. So when I'm going to have PIMS, the first year when I'm going to implement PIMS, first implement when I'll not be in a position to take all processes. It's going to be not possible at all. So what I'm going to see here is I'm going to decide what are those critical processes. Maybe I'll pick 3 or 4 critical processes, part of my PIMS. What is a critical process? Critical process may be, in this one, we may say that our risk 6.1, risk identification is our risk management is going to be a critical process. So I'm going to identify critical processes as part of my privacy management system. And for those critical processes, what I'm going to do is, for every process that I have identified, at least 1 measure that I'll identify, because I need to evaluate the process. Now, process cannot be evaluated directly unless you have a measure defined. So for that process, I'm going to define at least 1 measure. You can have multiple measures also. If you're going to define a measure, then you will also see that how you are going to, the method also, how you are going to capture that thing, how are you going to monitor it. So the moment I say that this is a process, risk management is a critical process, I'm going to take that and I keep monitoring it. I'm going to fix a target for that. Now on a periodical basis, I'm see that whether I'm meeting it or not. So process wise, I'm going to set a target and then watch it, monitor it, and then see whether I'm meeting. So there are 2 activities that you are seeing whether you are meeting the target or not. The other one is periodically the metrics that you have collected, you are going to analyze that. When you analyze that, you are going to identify opportunities for improvement. That is what you are going to do. You are going to implement it as part of the process, and you are going to improve the process. So this one, you are going to pick processes and keep improving year by year. So first year, we are going to pick 3 processes, and then you have certain target set, and you are going to have a plan for that. At the end of the year, you are going to implement, and it is going to be effective. You will ensure that it is effective. Next year, when it comes, you are going to carry forward these things which you already have last year. You are going to carry forward that, but the targets, you are going to make it tougher. You are going to make the target tougher. That means you are going in depth. So far, something like a risk, last year you had risk and you have identified, say, 250 risk. Now your target is going to be, this time I'm going to identify 350 risk. That is why we are going to make your job tougher here, increase that one. Along with that, you will also be adding 3 more processes. So if we do this continuously for 3-4 years, every year you are going to add new processes. And for the existing processes which you are carrying forward from the previous year, you are going to make the target tougher. In that way, each of your processes are going to be improved. And you can see that improvement over a period of time, at least 60% of your processes as part of your privacy will be under control. And year by year, you are going to have a plan to improve that. So process improvement is going to be the one that you are looking when you talk about monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. That is one thing. You are focusing process specific. Internal audit is something different. When you talk about audit, always the objective of an audit is to see compliance, whether you are compliance to 27701 or not. That's a primary thing. But this compliance itself is going to change. If it is going to be external auditing, then the external auditors, for them, external auditing is only for certification. So their focus, their objective is always going to be compliance, nothing else. They're going to see that based on the evidences what they pick, they are going to see the compliance and then they make a decision on that. For them, yeah, this compliance is going to be the primary objective. But for the internal auditing, compliance will be there definitely, because that is what we do. That's why we call that as an audit. But apart from that, one of the main objective what they have is you will be identifying more and more gaps in our process. There will be always gaps. Whatever you do, the best quality is something like this, right? When you talk about quality, the more you do, the more is going to be pending. Anything that you do, there is always something else you will have to do. So as part of the internal auditing, the objective what you have is you will be identifying gaps in our process. So the moment you are going to identify that as a gap and that you are going to report as a non-conformance, you are going to resolve it. By resolving it, you are going to improve your system. So internal audit is primarily to identify gaps. So that is a different approach so that you keep improving your system in a different angle. This one is on the process. In this one, you define what is to be improved. In this case, you are not defining. You are trying to see what is gap in that and trying to fix the gap. The third one is entirely different. This is also talking about performance, but this approach is entirely different, because in this management review, and this is one of the beautiful things that we have, because when you go back to 5.1 here, we talk about that the management is going to have everything. They are the people who are owning the entire implementation of PIMS. That is what we have seen in 5. Now, how they are going to demonstrate that? The only way they can demonstrate is by conducting management review. So when they are going to conduct a management review, they ensure that every process that is there is going to be reviewed as part of that, and the objectives that are set, whether we are meeting it or not. So in this case, in this part of a review, it is always going to be, as a name suggests here, it is a review, which means you set some goals at the beginning of the year, and throughout the year, periodically, you are going to track that and ensure that you will be meeting that one. So that is the difference here. In this case, you are focused, you are targeting yourself, you are finding some processes, you are identifying some process, and you want to improve in that process and keep working on that. In this one, you are looking for gaps in the process and see that how we can fulfill so that our process is going to get improved. And this case, what you have set as a target in the beginning of the year, you are going to ensure that you are going to track it, and then that is why the objectives are set. You are going to track it and then see that those things are met or not. So these three are all are going to do the same thing. Sometimes what you have here may be a target here, but the focus is always going to be different for each of them. All are going to be on performance evaluation. At the end, this is going to improve the process. This is also going to improve the process. This is also going to improve the process. What you get is going to be improvement in each of the process that you have. That is what is a performance evaluation. And how do we do that one? As far when you say that it is going to be improvements, that's what we are going to see in the next slide. So next slide talks about improvements. So there are two parts that are there. I call this as an accidental improvement. This is a planned improvement. Now, why it is accidental? Because when you are identifying non-conformity, now how we are going to get the non-conformity? When you are conducting a PII, or when there is a complaint that is coming from your principal, or when you are doing the inspection, you found that one, or when audit is conducted, you are going to get, there are multiple sources from where non-conformities are going to be identified. So it can be like complaints from, these are the things, inspection, PII, MR meeting, all these are going to be sources from where the non-conformity is going to be identified. The moment a non-conformity here, what we talk about, again, it is related to process. Actually, in our quality systems, ISO system, we always talk about process. When we talk about improvement, we talk about process improvement. When we talk about performance, we talk about process performance. Here also, when we talk about non-conformity, we talk about process non-conformity, because product non-conformity is not in the scope of our PIMS. That is entirely different. If you go for that, you can do that one. But in this one, we talk about the non-conformance with respect to PIMS that I have, the process. So once you identify that, you are going to go for removing that. You are going to resolve that. By resolving, there are two steps that are always going to be there. Some of you may be knowing about that: correction and corrective action. Now, correction is the fix that you are going to give for the instance of that non-conformity that is raised. So there is a non-conformity which is raised. You got a report, you are going to fix it, so that you are fixing that particular instance of that. Now, we are not going to stop there. We are going to continue our effort and see, we will be doing the root cause analysis and see why this non-conformity has come. We are going to find the root cause analysis and identify the root cause and see that how we can eliminate or minimize that. And when you do that, when that solution is going to be implemented into the system, that is what is called corrective action. So when you do this corrective action, you are going to improve the system, because corrective action is going to be done on the process, PIMS process that you have. So when you are going to do that one, system is going to be improved. So here, your intention, when you started this one, your intention is not improving the process, but in correcting the non-conformity that is there. That is why accidentally what you get is you are going to have some improvement in the system. Whereas this one is very specific. In the beginning of the year itself, you are going to identify in some process, you are going to bring some improvement. You are going to identify and you are going to plan. So you're going to call it out and then say this process, this is the improvement I want to do. And then you are going to identify a solution for that, and you are going to implement it, and you're also going to evaluate the effectiveness of that. So that is a continual improvement, what we talk about. Why it is continual? That is also one thing there, because PDCA, if you are familiar with PDCA, when the PDCA is going to be applied, Plan, Do, Check, Act, this is not going to be a linear one. It's a cyclic one anyway, but it is not going to be a continuous one. It is, there is, for some time, you are going to watch the system, get the feedback, you are going to consolidate that, and then decide what improvement you want to do. And then you are going to implement the changes. Again, you are going to wait for some time, monitor and get the thing. So there is always going to be a gap between the implementation and again, the second implementation that we have. That is why we call this as a continual improvement. It's like a sawtooth wave. So the standard is like your quality, your system is like this, and you are going to give improvement. There is a jump here. Then it goes straight, keep on going. So then again, there is going to be a jump. So it goes on like this. It's going to be more of a sawtooth wave. That's why we call this not as a continuous improvement. It is a continual improvement. Okay, let's move to the next part of that. Now we are in second part of that. So far, we have seen only on how we can leverage 27,001. So one part of that 27,001, how can we do that one? So we have seen all the classes, how that classes are going to be meaningful with respect to 27,701. Now we are going to see on the control part of that, the controls, 114 controls that are there, how that is going to be applicable for that. Now, why we are always talking, you may be now thinking that you are talking about 27,701, but right from the beginning till the end, you are talking about 27,001 and 27,002. Why? The reason for that is basically when we talk about data privacy, basic thing is information security. Now that information security is going to be specific at the attribute level. That is what we are looking for. So when it is going to be, when you do not have the base of security, whatever you do for privacy is not going to be there. So that is why security is always going to be there. Once you have that one done, then automatically you are going to go for that one. Okay. So that is how we will be doing that one. So in this one, we are going to, we will be using all the controls that are there. And in this slides, you are going to see few of them, not all of them. We will be discussing those things where there is going to be more thing that we are going to do that one. So there are guidelines given, what we will have to focus on, guidelines are given. So in this one, sorry, there is a typo there, 2013. Okay, so how we are going to do that one? That's what we are going to see here. So now the first thing is DPO. We did talk about that yesterday. DPO is a data protection officer who is going to be the overall head for any organization. He is going to be the person who is going to be in charge for our data privacy team. Now, if that is that, this particular position, what are the first thing is this? If it is yesterday also I mentioned, if this particular role may not be there as a permanent designation in many of the organizations. Smaller organization, they cannot afford to go for having their own employee as a DPO. So they will be going for outsourcing, so that they will be using a consultant who will be playing this role. And that consultant will be playing the same role for multiple companies as DPO. Now that's a different thing, but it's going to be an enterprise corporate, then you will be having our own employee as a DPO. So he's going to be the person who is going to be responsible for everything. So that's what we see here. What is the rest of the roles we have seen yesterday? The rest of the two roles that we have PII controller and PII processor that we have seen. So now the DPO, the organization should designate a point of contact for use by the customer regarding the processing of PII. So the PII controller designate a point of contact for PII principal regarding the processing of their PII. So there should be one point contact for the principals as well as for other people who are going to, other third-party people who want to contact the organization with respect to for privacy related activities. So this is a role that is going to be there. That's an independent role. Why it is independent? They should not be influenced by other roles. That's why we say that independent. Independent is they should not get influenced. If something is there, the data privacy is there is a problem that has happened, and this person, this role has to do it with the independence. He has to do it with that one so that he should not get influenced by management pressure or something. So that's why it is an independent role and report directly to appropriate management. Normally, when you have a person who will be playing this role, DPO, they will be directly reporting to the top management, even if he is going to be a staff member or even if it is going to be a consultant, then also it is going to be there because decisions are going to be taken at that level. It is not going to be at the middle manager or lower level. So we need to have that level. And that's why we go for that. That's why we say that most of the time, smaller companies, they cannot afford to have a person, full-time person for DPO. So you go for outsourcing. This role should be involved in management of all issues which relate to processing. You should be expert. These are the things that we expect as part of this responsibilities. So data protection legislation, regulation, and practice. And is also going to be one point contact for supervisory authorities. Now, supervisory authorities is from the government side, the regulatory body. The name can change. In GDPR, we still call that as a supervisory authority. In some places, it is a different name is given for this one. Whatever it is, there is going to be a contact point from the regulatory authority. So this role, DPO role, is always going to be one point contact. And he's also going to provide advice to whenever PA assessments are done, he's going to advise, and a training related thing. He's the person who has to advise. So he's the person who will be initiating everything as part of our organization. That's a role what we are looking for. You should be knowing about that. And when something goes wrong, when there is an incident happen, how quickly you'll have to respond to that, how you'll have to communicate, how you'll have to deal, or how you'll have to work with the individual principals as well as the supervisory authorities. All these are going to be role done by this role DPO. Okay. Now we see some of the controls that are extended. We need to do something extra as part of our thing. And again, you need to know the entire thing, because the one thing part of that, if you remember yesterday, we were talking about when we are comparing GDPR with 27701, we said that till 43, one-to-one mapping is there. Beyond that, it is not there, which means the articles that are there as part of GDPR after 43, they are all going to tell you the functions that are to be done at the government level, that is the regulatory body level. So the person who is going to play the role of DPO, he should know how that functions. So normal function cannot, a normal person cannot do that one. So that idea you may not be having. That's why we go for that. Of course, cost is also one factor. Now, one of the things that we say is physical media transfer. This is going to be very specific. You need to have this handled in a different way for our privacy management system, because in this one, when we talk about data, when you are transferring the data transfer happens many times. So when you are going to transfer the data physically, when it is going to be transferred, we do that, right? Physically, we do that sometimes when the recipient or when the data principal is going to ask for something, or when you are going to transfer the data to the processor or any other third party, then physical transfer is happening. In that case, what are the things that we'll have to, what control that we need to have? One thing is we need to have a log of these things for every transfer that is going to happen. That should be objective for that one. Then objective should have been already approved, and you are going to have enough evidences. So you are going to log that one. So you're going to log including the physical media, what is used. It can be a physical media if you're going to use a DVD, whatever, in what format you want to do, who has authorized that, who is authorized to receive that, date and time, number of physical, all these things are any information that is related to this has to be extensively recorded, so that is what is going to help us later. Because most of the time when the audit, or if there is going to be some incident that is going to happen, you always go for a post-mortem, and only the evidences are going to protect us. So unless you are showing interest in, if you are focusing on how we are going to create the evidences, then it is you will not be meeting that later. You will be struggling to explain or struggling to demonstrate that that is the right way you have done during when it was done. So when possible, the additional measures such as encryption, what is needed, that is a process that we are going to say, depending on what type of data that you are going to transfer. The organization should subject physical media containing PII. So this is the thing, whether PII should be allowed to be transferred out of the premises or not. If that is there, authorization should be there. There should be an objective for that one. There should be approval for that one. Everything should be there as part of that. So you will be having a separate process for that on what type of information can go out, who has to authorize, what is the process, how it can go, what are the preventive measures that you can, like encryption, or what type of preventive measure that you are going to use. That process has to be established. This is going to be more than, it's going to be severe than normal media transfer that we have. Okay, so that is always going to be one thing that we will be looking for when we talk about this media transfer. So we were talking about this physical media transfer. So that is one thing that we'll have to focus more, because that is what is expected as part of that. We need to ensure whenever the data is going to be transferred, we need to ensure that we have taken enough precautions, preventive ways. Secure development policy. So the way that we are going to develop the policy, when you're going to define the policy, what is that we will have to, how we will have to approach. So when the things that are going to contribute to get this privacy policy created, how to do that, and what is that we'll have to focus for. So guidance on PII protection and the implementation of privacy principles in the software development lifecycle. This is what is the main thing. Most of us, we feel that when we talk about privacy management system, it is only on the process side. It is not, of course, it is there. I don't deny that, because most of the things that are there is going to be done on the process, on administrative ways will be there. Based on that, you are going to have some ways by which you will be preventing that. But the way that we, the nature that we are in, we are dependent on software. So for everything, we are going to be dependent on software, because anything, any information is going to be part of the software application. If that is the case, then if you want to bring this privacy inbuilt as part of the application itself, then you will have to focus on when that software is being developed. So that is where the whole thing is different. So this is going to be, that is what we talk about is the privacy thing, the privacy by default, privacy by design. These two are going to be implemented in the software itself. So it is going to be inbuilt as part of the software lifecycle. That is where the entire shift has turned, because everything is not going to be possible by having process defined. And the software that is available as of now, you take any software, which may be, you will be, because just because information security is one thing which is generic, you will be in a position to handle that by having generic controls. Whereas for this particular thing, when you want to have a privacy related one, which is going to be specific from the data principle perspective, and for every data principle, it is going to be different, because when there are going to be 30 attributes and there are going to be, say, 1,000 data principles are there, choice of everyone is going to be entirely different, the way that the rights they are going to give. So in that case, if that is not going to be taken as part of the application, then you can never achieve this one. It's going to be very difficult to get this implemented. So that is the reason, the whole shift that is happening. That's what we are going to see some of the frameworks also today. We're going to spend some time as an introduction, how we are going to inbuild this privacy by design and privacy by default as part of the development lifecycle, and how we are going to have an application while you are developing the application. In fact, while you are designing the application itself, you are going to get these things as part of that. So when you say privacy by design of the software itself. So when you say privacy by default, the way that screens are going to be built, the way that we are going to get the values using a portal screen or something. So that should be very much related to the application than the process. So there are certain things which you can do through administrative controls, then a lot of things that you can do, you'll have to do using the application. That is where the challenge has come. That's why ISMS is easier when compared to privacy management system, because privacy management system has to be dealt at the application level, not at the data level. When you want to protect the data, only the database as a generic thing, there are multiple ways to do that one. But whereas privacy is going to be related to certain attributes of a particular row or something, that is how it is going to ultimately end it. So when that, and that is also not going to be a single thing, and it is a dynamic one, depending on how the rights are given by the data principle. The availability of the data is going to keep changing, and the system should be enable should be capable of handling that one. That is where the thing that's why we need to focus more on that. There are certain SDLC life cycles which are there, and there are certain frameworks that are available. We are going to see one of the framework just after this, 1 or 2 slides from here. So, so when we are going to set this policy is not only for the process what we talk about. We will be talking about the applications that we use as part of information that we gather and collect, process, and then we save. There also it is going to be applicable. That is the main change, or that is a major difference that you can see between the information security and privacy one. The rest of the things are there, PII protection checkpoints. These are the normal things that you have when you have a lengthy life cycle. So you will be having the protective points at various levels, so that you do not want that bug to get continued throughout the life cycle. Because when you are going to see that, when you are going to, as a preventive measure, when you are going to identify that in the previous or initial stages, you are going to arrest it there itself. That is what we talk about this. And default value, minimizing the process, that is always that is, sometimes this can be done using the application, sometimes it can be done through the process also. But we will be focusing more on the software development lifecycle also. You'll see that now. Now, the other thing is how we are going to respond to the incidents. Now, when the incidents are going to happen, there is going to be a response from both sides, from the controller as well as from the processor. So now the incidents, what do you mean by the incident? It can be anything, because when you remember what we are talking, when we talk about incident as part of information management system, any failure of CIA, confidentiality, integrity, or availability, and we call that as an incident. Same thing is going to be applicable here also. When there is a request raised by the processor, which is not responded in a right way by the controller, and it, so that is also considered as an incident. Or anything that you are going to have a data loss, or anything that is also going to be part of any breach. That's a major thing, severe thing that we'll be having. So we need to see that how this is going to be, how that has happened, and what is going to be the impact that it is going to create. So as part of the controllers, what are the things that they are supposed to do? An incident that involves PII. So that is what we are interested in, only in those incidents where PII is going to be involved. And the problem here is, every time when there is going to be an incident happen at the ISMS side, we always have to look into that and then see whether any PII information has been there as part of it. Because when the incident is going to happen, we will not be clear whether it is going to be only specific to PII or not, because the information is going to be same. And when it is going to be PII, that is where every incident that has to come as part of the information security, we are all going to see whether that has any PII related to that or not. An event does not necessarily trigger such a, so whenever you, so when an event happens, sometimes the event there is a difference, right? When you go for a normal server shutdown, or the event that you schedule, and because of that, sometimes it can create an incident also if it is not working in a proper way when you are going to get it up. So that is also that, but they may not go for a breach with respect to privacy. When breach of PII has occurred, response procedure should be include relevant notification or record. Main thing is you need to document it, and then for all the stakeholders, at least for the processor, at least for the data principal and other people, you need to notify that. First thing is you are going to talk about the supervisory authority for whom you are going to do that one, and the PII principles for them also, we are going to let them know. Notification, what are the things that should be part of that? So it should talk about the description of that, who is going to be the contact point, what are the possible consequences of that breach, and how many individuals that got affected, or how many rows are got affected, measures taken so far or planned to be taken. So that should be as part of the notification that should be there. And the information has to be recorded also. Internally, we need to record that. Every information related to that breach should be recorded. This is what is going to help us as evidence later when there is going to be a when there is going to be any PII when it's conducted, then these information is going to help us. On the processor side also, there are multiple things that they'll have to look for, because these people sometimes the incident can happen at the processor end, if that is a thing, or if the breach, and the breach is going to happen at the processor end, it is a responsibility of the processor to ensure that quickly is going to contact the controller, and then he is going to communicate that. That's the main thing that will be having that. And based on that, it is the controller who is going to take a action based on that one. So notification is going to be first thing that is always going to be there. And when any PA is going to be conducted, PA processes are also going to be responsible. They will have to support that also. And any evidence that we have, we'll have to maintain that, because those are the things which are going to be used for regulatory purpose and for forensic things later when they want to find what is the cause of that. Those things are only going to be used. So responsibility is going to be there on both end, on the controller end as well as on the processor end, but it is always going to be the primary person. Obligation is always who is going to be handling the obligation is the controller, but that is also going to be transferred to the processor in terms of the contract obligation that is going based on that. Okay, now we are coming to next part of that. I have not, as I said, I've seen only few things that I have mentioned here. There's a long list that we have. So it's if you are going for implementing some 27701 training for that one, that it's a 5-day program that covers the entire thing that is there. We will not be in a position to do that one. If you have noticed that from yesterday and today, I've covered various areas, at least 7 different areas I have given introduction. And this is the last one, which I'm going to, the 7th one or 8th one, I think. This, how you are going to build that, how you are going to build, what type of thing that you want to do that one, how practically you can go for PIMS implementation. Main thing what we want here is you go for this privacy by design, because when you are designing the application, that's what we have seen earlier. When you are designing the application itself, you need to think for what should be there as part of that, so that the privacy is going to be protected. Now, there are 7 principles that are given as far as privacy by design is concerned. One thing is everything you will have to do as a proactive, and it should be a preventative, because you should anticipate. That's why we go for risk management. So we are going to have risk management. We are going to identify the risks, and then for those risks that are identified, we'll be having certain measures, so that even in the case that's going to happen, we will be having controls so that we can minimize that one. So that is the thing that we have here. So it should be always a preventative one and proactive. That's the first thing that we always say. And privacy is always as default. So just because the individual is not given his consent or he has delayed it, you cannot take it granted and then you can consider that as yes given. That is not the case. So by default, it should be the safest one for the principal. So anything that is not going to affect him, that is what should be the default. So whatever option that you are going to give, like the way that you have seen, I was mentioning yesterday, the checkboxes that are there, I should not keep it checked. The default value should not be that. Whatever default value that we give, that should be supporting the data principle. That is a main thing that we'll have to do. And this we need to look and we need to focus on that when we are designing itself. Though we call as 2 different things, privacy as default should be inbuilt, and then you are going to design it when you are going to design it as the application itself. And privacy embedded into design, that's the main thing. If you don't do this, then we are going to miss that one. It should be part of the entire design. And then don't have some trade-offs. Trade-off in the sense you need to, when you are implementing this privacy related controls as part of our application, we should not accommodate for trade-offs. So when you want to do, it has to be 100%. Full functionality has to be established. There should not be any trade-off. We say that if there is going to be there only this part, we are not going to take care of, then not should be that. Entire functionality has to be implemented. So when you give that, it is going to be full-proof system. And when this design, when you are going to do this design, this is going to be for the entire life cycle of the application. So end-to-end, when you say application, it is going to be for the life cycle, the way that features are going to be used. So it is going to be giving end-to-end life cycle protection. So that should be part of the entire application that we have. So every feature that we are going to have, everything that an user can do with that one, you need to ensure that all the privacy requirements are taken care as part of that. And anything that you do, visibility and transparency should be there. And this is going to be applicable only for the data principle. It's not that everything is going to be visible to everyone, but what you do and why you are processing, what are the data that you do, who are the client, so with whom you are selling the, or you are going to share the information or not. All these things should be made transparent to data principles. And then respect the user privacy. That's a most important one. You always should respect the user privacy. And that is why we need to consider the default value that we give. That should always ensure that the privacy of the user should not be taken for ransom. So always you'll have to maintain that one. So these are the 7 principles which are to be applied across when you are developing any software which is going to hold any type of information that's going to be there. So these 7 principles are to be taken care. Now, when you want to have this one, what are the things that we are going to see some of the things from this one, how we are going to build this, what is expected from standards. Now, when you look at 27701, when we talk about privacy by design and privacy by default, this is a thing that is expecting. So whenever it is going to be temporary files, in any case, it has to be, once the job is done, the reason for which the temporary files are created, you need to erase or destroy it. You'll have to ensure process to ensure that whenever it is going to be a return, transfer, or disposal of PII, you need to have that process defined so that it is going to be done in a secured manner. And the transmission, whenever the data is going to be transmitted between the processor and the controller, or between the data principal and for any stakeholder, you'll have to ensure that this transmission is going to be secure. Now, these things you'll have to focus when we are going to design it. At the time of design itself, we need to ensure that these things are taken care so that it is not going to allow the person to do in a different way. This is what is expected as part of 27701. Whereas the same thing, the expectation that is given in GDPR is, as much as possible, this is the thing, as much as possible, implement appropriate technical and organizational measure. So one thing is technical, other one is organization. One thing, the administrative ways by which you can do that one. And if it is possible, you are also going to do some technical things. So when I'm going to have a process where that process is going to use the application, I will have most of the things done as part of the application technically. And then I'm also going to get the awareness for the people who are going to use that application so that they will also follow the process to ensure that one. So this pseudo-anonymization, minimization, all these things are tools or methodologies that are going to be used to ensure this design default data by design and default. Obligation applies to the amount of personal data. This is always going to be one thing. Like when I'm going to process anything, I always ensure that only the required data is going to be used for that. That means I'm going to consider only that data which is essential for running the process. That is what the standard 27701 talks about, design and privacy by design and privacy by default, and GDPR also talks about that. Now we are coming a different aspect of that. When you want to build an application, we need to have a framework. That is what is a privacy framework for what we talk about. So this privacy framework provides a common language for understanding, managing, and communicating privacy risk, internal and external stakeholder. This can be applied anywhere, but we are going to see something, how this is going to be made as a structured way so that you will not miss anything. So we are going to see one popular framework, and we are going to spend only 2-3 slides on that. We don't have much time to discuss on that one. So it's going to give again an introduction on how this can be achieved. What are the methodologies or frameworks that are already available, so that if you follow that, implementing this is going to be easier. So what we have is NIST privacy framework, the core element. So in this, as part of the framework, there are certain things which are given as a core element. You have functions, and there are categories and subcategories under that. Function is what is that you are going to do with that one. So when we talk about the privacy framework, it is also going to have parallel framework, which is for information security. And that is why if you look at this one, the functions that are given here are having this suffix as P. This suffix P is going to tell us that this particular thing is related to privacy. If it is going to be security, it is going to be yes. That's a difference here. So the framework is common. So that is why you want to give the difference there. That's why we have that. So what is given here is you have this framework. As part of this framework, these are the major functions that are there. You can identify, you're going to govern it, you're going to control it, you're going to communicate it, you're going to protect it. What is going to be done, that comes later, but these are the things. So these are the core thing what we have. So the privacy activities at their highest level. This is at the highest level. Their aid on organization is expressing its management of privacy risk by understanding and managing data processing or whatever it is. So for everything you are going to apply this. That is what we are going to see that one. Now each of that is going to be, you will be having multiple categories under that. First subdivisions of a function. You have a function and that's going to be multiple categories. And then every category is going to have multiple subcategories. So this is how we are going to, this is going to change from organization to organization. Or if you are going to apply this for, this can be applied for application also. If you want to build that, there also it is going to be different. Now, what is the meaning of that? That's what we are going to see. That identify is going to get the, that is context. You are going to identify, that means you are going to understand the context of the organization, and then you will be identifying the privacy risk for individuals arising from the data processing. So you are going to see what are the processes that we do that. You can see that it is similar to what we have seen earlier. So the same thing, it is a parallel thing, because it is a framework, it gives that one. That is also a framework. Now in this one, you are going to identify the processes, and in each process, you are going to, again, we have Ram doing some. So identifying the privacy risks, that's the first part of that. Then governing that. So develop and implement the organizational governance structure to enable an ongoing understanding. So when we want to govern, this is not that you are going to do it only once. So you need to have a process, and there are ways by which you will keep improving that. You need to have a way to govern the entire thing, govern and manage things. So that is why we have a, how you need to find a way to govern that one. Then you need to have a way to control that. That is what is the main thing. This you identify that, then you are governing that, and then you will be controlling that. Controlling is you are going to come out with some measure for that. Then communicate that. So once you know that, you need to communicate to various stakeholders related to that. So you are going to talk, or you are going to do that one here. You are going to engage a dialogue, and then if required, you are going to call multiple people. Maybe some application also, sometimes it is possible. And then the last one, what we have is develop and implement appropriate data processing safeguard. Now this is a protection, what you are going to give for that. There's a control, what you want to develop and implement. This you are going to protect. So develop and implement appropriate data processing safeguards. So that is how we are going to do that. These are the 5 things there as part of this NIST privacy framework. The functions, first, that's the first one. Now, what is this function? How are we going to get the meaning of that? Now, when you work on this one, there is always, as I said, this is always going to be on 2 things. So that is the cybersecurity and the privacy. They are going to be always together, because they are almost, they are same, right? The way that we are going to interpret is only different. So there is always going to be something, a relationship between these 2. So that is why we have certain functions given this P, and those things are going to be there. So the Protect P specifically focused on managing risk associated with the cybersecurity related privacy events. So when we talk about this suffix, that's going to say, what is that? When I say protect, I'm going to protect the privacy related one. So when I go to identify, I'm going to say that I'm going to deal something with the privacy. That is how we do that. When it is not having that, then it is going to be normal. That is the information security related one. And this Venn diagram, because it is a Venn diagram, because there are certain things which are going to be common. So there are certain areas which are going to be common. That's why we always say, when we want to implement PIMS, you need to have ISMS. Then only you can both go together. That is, there are certain common areas, but there are certain things which ISMS has, which may not be required by a privacy management system. But still, we go together because most of the things are in common. Okay, now when you come back to this functions, what we talk about that. So the categories that there, because we have seen here, if you look at this one, we have this function, categories and subcategories. What is the meaning of that? That's what we are trying to see here. So the function is going to be the one that we have. So category is going to be that, and then so you will be having a category. So when I'm going to say identify, I'm going to identify inventory and mapping, identify business environment, identify risk assessment, identification related to data processing. So you are going to categorize that. There are going to be multiple categories that are related to that one. So these are mentioned here. So you have 4 things, or categories are defined here at the second level. You will also be having a subcategory level to that one. So that is the way you are trying to break it into multiple levels. Now, always the functions are going to be, these are the 5 major functions that we have, and you will be having the second level categories like this. The second concept, what we have is profiles. Now, the core functions that we have, the 5 functions that we have, you can see that color code. Each one is important. I'll give that idea also later. Now, the profile is, I may be having these core. These are the 5 functions that I have. But when I'm going to implement, there will be a different priority in which I will be working on. Ultimately, I'm hoping for this. I'm targeting for this. All these things are going to be there. And these are the levels we are going to see later. So I'm going to say that this is the current profile that I have. These are the profiles. So this is a whole thing that I have. Currently, this is what I have. In identification, these are the measures that are available. Governance, this is the thing available. Protection, this is the thing available. Whereas what I'm targeting, the first phase, what I'm targeting is whatever is there in identification, I'm going to increase that. Governance, I'm going to continue with that. And I'm going to introduce more controls here. Communication is going to be introduced more, and protection is going to be controlled. So this is what is my target. This is a current one. So this is a stakeholder. You are going to take a stake of what is available as of now, what type of controls that are there. You are going to identify for every risk that is there. I'm going to say that what is what risk available, what are the measures that are available. I need to document that. And then as a first phase, what are the things that I'm going to do? So I'm going to, this is the core, the entire thing. This is what I'm anticipating, or this is what I'm targeting at the end. But I will not go in one jump. So I'm going to say this is the target that I have. You can see that this is the levels that are there. So second level is always going to be the profile. Profile is what is available now, stock taking. And then what is the target that you have? So depending on the funding that you have or the staffing, you are going to plan for it, because it is going to be time period. So you're going to have a plan. In 6 months, I'm going to do that one. So I'm not going to achieve everything, but this is how currently this is here. And in 6 months, I'm going to achieve. Next 6 months, I'll be having this as a current, and then target will be something else. So I keep on moving. And once I achieve this, then I'll be completing the entire thing. That is the framework that we have. That's how we need to do this one. The third level is the implementation tiers. That's what is the color bands that are there, these bands. So these bands, what is that? There are 4, you can see that there are 4 tiers that are 4 tiers that are there. That is what is a maximum thing that you can do. That is what is mentioned here, implementation tiers. So distinct tiers. So partial, risk informed, repeatable, adaptive. So if you are familiar with CMMI, something similar to that. In this case, at the first level, it is partial. Then the second case, we know the risks are there. We know what risks are there. So there are certain things which are repeatable. We are doing that. Adaptive is the next level what we have. So these are the 4 levels that we are going to implement at every function that we have. So you can see that we started with functions here. Go back that you started with function. These are fixed 5 functions that are there. And for this function, they are going to be categories and subcategories. The long list of subcategories are there. And then you will be having these categories mentioned here. The main thing that will be focusing this profile. Profile is always going to be on the functions. And then you are going to say, this is the current profile, and this is the target that I'm looking for. So this is how we are going to plan for it and then take it to the next level. And this bands that are there is going to tell us whether we have achieved the target level or not in each of that. So progression is always going to be, the higher tiers is always going to be there. And depending on how quick you want to do, depending on the budget available, feasibility, you will be in a position to, it's a stacked manner you are going to implement the changes that you want to. Now we see, you can ask me like why we don't talk anything about the software here. And this NIST, what we talk about, this framework is common. You can apply anywhere. I can apply this for changing the process. I can apply this for getting the software thing also done. But this is a huge area, but I just want to give an idea so that you will know that there is something available in this perspective, which is specific. NIST is specific for privacy, and we say that it's a privacy framework. So once we start going deeper into that, then we see that how this framework is going to help us so that our process can be fit into that, and then easily things can be planned. You can plan like this, and then you can go in a measurable way. You can see the progress also. That's what is a NIST one, what we have. Okay. So As of now, that is what maximum we can do that one, because we do not have this introductory session that we have. Okay, now we are switching over to something else. Now we talk about data. It is all because of the data, right? Whenever we talk about privacy, privacy is all going to be because of the data. So when we talk about data, the way that it is going to be represented. So, yeah. So you have multiple things. That is the thing. Whenever we have data, there is always going to be certain data which is going to be called as identifiers, so that you know that's going to identify whose data it is. So name or SSN, quasi identifiers. You have certain things. Somewhere or other, you will be in a position to get into this. You can, when you use this one with some other, if you want to try, you can get into this. This is the second level. Other than this, you are going to have that one. Mostly, it's going to be uncertain. You cannot exactly say, even with the date of birth, you will not be in a position to exactly say, this is the guy. A zip also, with that, you cannot say. There is so that is uncertainty, which is always there. Name, you will not be in position to identify, but some idea you can have. Confidential attributes for this person, you are not going to reveal certain things, diseases and other things. We are not going to. That is a very sensitive information. Non-confidential attributes, that will be there. So for every data principle, there are going to be, say, there may be, because I get this information from various sources, wherever they are using different terminologies. So you have a principle. For every principle, there are going to be multiple attributes. So when I'm going to get the data, I'm going to have multiple, say, so 30 or 35 attributes are going to be there, which are going to be considered as columns for our data. And if it is going to be for one data principle, if I'm going to have 1,000 data principle, I'll be having 1,000 rows. And that is what is going to be something like this. The data that I'm going to have, it is going to be something like this. So these are the things, all these things are going to be there. It is complete data that I have for every data principle that I have. Now, if somebody is asking me, you'll have to provide me only the diseases that people have got and what is the age that I want to know. If that is a request that has come from the government. So from this master list, we'll have to prepare this list. List is going to have only the date of birth and the disease and which area and which sex. This is what is in here. Name is removed. So identifiers, the first level thing is the identifiers are removed from that one. You are not adding this identifier. So what they are interested in is only this one. They want to see, they are doing some research so that they want to see the relation between age and this disease, probably where it is coming. So, and they can relate to say, the gender also there. So there should be a relation between these things. That is what is the analysis they do. For that, you need that, they need this information, which is what we are going to support. So when we are going to supply that, we are going to remove this one. That is what is a de-identified data. This is what is going to happen. So this is a process. So there is going to be a third party which is going to ask us, I want this data, you provide me. Now you are going to run the process, and I'm going to run the process. There is a thing that they will say that I want only for this zip code. So that is a filter. So when I say that is only the zip, that means I'm filtering the rows based on the zip code. So there are going to be 5,000 data, that are 5,000 rows that I have. For a specific zip code, I may be having 500 or something. So that is how we are going to filter the rows. And I'll say that these are the 4 things that I want: date of birth, gender, zip, and disease. So now that is what is going to be filtering the columns. So when they ask for that, I'm going to give only this data. I should not give the entire one. That is what is the minimization, what we talk about. And this saying that is always going to be easy, because when you see this, what we are doing, this is going to be available in an application. And this request is not a common one. If this is going to be asked every month, probably I'll be having a report generated readily that will be available as a feature of the application. But that is not the case. When the requirement is going to come, then there's going to be ad hoc requirement. In such case, I'll have to prepare every time. So that is what is the challenge that we are going to have here. There's something like this. In this case, consent may be there because somebody is asking about consent. This is coming for specific, the generic costs. Sometimes when it is going to be generic cost, is the exemptions are there. The exempted one in that case, because country is asking for some for medical purpose, it is asking. So in this case, your information is going to be shared, but can you ensure that your names are not going to be shared? This is an example that you can see. Okay, now the next one, what we have is when we go for the approach, what is that we'll have to do first? The first thing that we'll have to do that is you need to identify. So when we know that this is the data that we have, all these attributes are there. The next thing what we need to do that is you need to identify the data which is PII. So you're going to have a process area and you are going to take a workflow. When you're going to implement this for the first time, you're going to pick every process area, pick a workflow and go to the steps in that and see who are all stakeholders in that one. And you are going to identify those attributes which are PII. And for that, how to do that one, then you need to know for every PII that is there, who is the owner, who has to authorize that, whether there is a control by design available or not, whether control by default is available or not, controls by process is there or not, the gaps, what are the gaps? This is what we are going to do as a exercise now. We'll see that I'm going to show you some sample how this is implemented in one of my client recently. We did this and we did this analysis and then come out with PII information across the processes that are there, because that is the first step. First step is always 6.1. If you remember, you are trying to analyze the risk analysis. You need to identify the risk in every process area. So that is why you are going to pick process area, go for every workflow, identify the steps along with the stakeholders. Then you are going to identify whether that particular attribute wise you are going to do, and then you see that whether that is a PII. Then you are going to identify who is the owner, who authorized for every activity that is there. So this is what we will be doing now. We're going to see some templates now. Now, the same thing what we discussed. You have a process area. So HR is a process area. The workflow which I'm picking is addition of employees. If an employee is going to join, what I'm going to do with that? That is a flow I'm going to consider. Now, if that is the case, this is the workflow and these are the steps. So when the person is going to come for joining, this is how I'm going to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is how I'm going to see that for every step, which I'm going to see, every step is an activity, which is going to be part of this employee addition. For that activity, because every process that you do as part of the privacy management, that should have been initiated. That's what we are going to see now. Now, before that, related to that, I'm going to identify what are the PIIs that are there. So in this case, there are a lot of PIIs that are there because it is an employee. So he's going to employee ID, name, address, account number, personal mail ID, dependents. That is also going to be there because dependent detail also is going to fill in related to provident fund. All these things are going to be there. A lot of information. You need to identify each of them. All are there. You are going to take stock of each of that, which is going to be associated with this. At this, throughout this work flow, what are the PII information that are used? That's the first thing that we do. And you are going to identify the steps. When I'm going to add an employee, that means when I'm going to onboard an employee, how do I do? Now, the first step I'm going to do that is employee provides data. So candidates is going to give information. So employee is going to provide the data. Now, what is the tool by which he's going to do that one? He's going to we are going to give him a candidate information sheet. Is going to fill in that. That is the step. Employee is going to do that one. So who is going to be the owner? The owner is going to be employee for this particular step. And then who is authorized? This activity of getting, that is a collection, data collection, right? So this is a data collection activity that we do. If you are not following, let me know. This is how we will have to approach every small process that we have. You're going to pick an area and pick a workflow. Then you are going to come out with the steps here. Then what you do is, this is a logical step, one after other in a sequence. Now, for every step, you are going to see what is the tool that is required here. So sometimes it is going to be the sheet that manually is going to fill. In some organization, you can see that he has to key in some application. Either way, somewhere or other, you are going to get the detail from the employee for the first time. So that is why it is owned by employee. Now, how an employee can do this one? Somebody has to authorize. Anybody cannot walk into our organization and do that one. So there should be someone who has authorized. What is that which is authorized? It can be a process which is authorized or a person. So the person, only when a candidate who was issued an offer letter by HR, he will be joining that, and on joining day, he is going to do that one. So this is the one which is telling us this particular activity is authorized. So otherwise, this is not. So that is what we are going to. So he will be allowed to make his entries in the candidate information sheet, only one that is authorized. That is what we see. Every process has to be authorized. Why? Because this, when we talk about this candidate information sheet, this information sheet is going to have all this information. And each of that, what we given here is a PII information. If the PII information is going to be dealt anywhere in our organization, that's going to be one that we'll have to focus. And the employee is also one of the data principle here. That is understanding. When we talk about this, employee is a data principle. So this data we are going to, the organization is going to hold. And the first time from where we are going to get, this is a point. When he's going to be receiving the letter based on the offer letter, is going to get all his detail entered into this information sheet, which is going to be a manual one. Then this is to be approved. So once it is written here, somebody going to check that one. So that is a control by design what we have. Control by design, when we talk about control by design, it's not necessarily that it should be in the software. It can be as part of the process also. Somewhere or other, you need to bring some control at the design level. At this level itself, we should not check this later. It should be checked at that level itself. You are trying to get that data, there itself we are going to control it, which means you are going to check that one. Then controls by default. What are the default values that are there? For all these things, default values are null. I'll come to that. There are certain things where default values are available. So default values are going to be null. Then controls by process. So what process it is going to be there? So to be reviewed by HR, and it should be deleted once moved to HR archive. So HR has to review this, and then once it is reviewed and then uploaded to the application, then this physical copy has to be archived. So this is the thing that controls by process that we have. You see that control by design, controls by default, controls by process. These three are going to be related to this particular step that we have. Then you are also going to say, is there any gap in there in the control currently? So you are going to pick one activity and then see everything. Then once it is done, then we are going to the next one. So it is filled and it is given to the HR. So there's what. So HR is going to key, somebody is going to key in this application name. So somebody is going to key in there. So who is going to own that one? This keying in is going to be owned by HR. Now HR, who is going to authorize them? Again, for them, only for those people who have been offered by HR and who is already onboarded. So only that is an indication for the person who is going to do this keying in. And what is that? What is the design that we have? So template is going to see, is going to check this template that is given here. That should be the template what HR has given. If it is some other template, is not going to accept it. That is a control by design. So if it is not, if he is going to use some other template, probably that may not contain what these people are looking for. That's why that is the control by design. Only authorized HR team member can key in. These are the default things that are there. Employee cannot do. There are two controls that are there as default. Okay, so then the default values for this nothing, and then gaps at this part of this particular company where we had when this is entered, it is not reviewed because it is reviewed by HR once it is written by the employee. But once it is keyed in, it is not reviewed and it is not approval. Approval process is not there. And that is what we are identifying as a gap. So when we are doing this process, when you are going to fill this one, you are looking at every level. You are going to look what are the PII that are used, what are the steps that are done, who is doing that, who is authorizing that activity, what are the controls by design, default, and process. Is there any gap available in the process? In one go, you are doing everything. So you go to the next one. So employee file, physical file is created, physical and digital file is created. So that is who is going to create. So he's going to create employee cell directly is going to create in that application, and then folder is created. So you are going to, these are the controls. Folder should be in the name of the employee. By default, it should be there. Otherwise, it is not going to. These are the things that are going to be done as part of the design. So it's going to do that one. And checklist. So here, when you are doing this one, how you are going to control that. So control by process, that's what we are looking. So you have a checklist to see whether every document is available or not. You may be having, say, 20. So when an employee is going to join, you are going to ask him to submit is all qualifications, then previous employment, is TDS information, tax information, address proof, photograph, all these things are going to be there. So you'll be having a checklist, and then with respect to checklist, you are going to review that. And that is what is there. So this is a control by process. You are going to check that. And in this one, there are gaps on that. So you are going to do that continuously till you complete this particular process. So there are going to be multiple people will be there in the sequence. You start with that employee, HR, then it is moved to some other person, then it is moved to some outsourcing agency, and it goes on. So this is how you are going to identify the process. This has to be done for every process. See that it is going to be very tedious job, but there is no other way you can do that one. You need to identify. You need to ensure that every process in our organization, in every process area, you are going to identify the steps and you are going to identify each of that. So you are going to repeat this for every activity. So anything you want to discuss, or you have more on that? Control activity, what we control is, this control is not the control what we talk about as part of the standard. This is control measure what we talk about. This is a control measure by design, control measure by default, control measure by process. In this case, when the person is going to, when the HR guy is going to key in what is given by the candidate, after the key in is done, nobody's reviewing it in that organization. So because here it is reviewed. So what he has written is right, that is reviewed. But here it is keyed in. So you need to review whether the thing that is there available in this information sheet, whether the same thing has been keyed in or not. Nobody's reviewed. That is what we identified as a gap, which means we'll have to correct that one. So that is, so you are doing that as part of the same exercise. You do that for every activity, and then one by one you are going to go for that. It's going to be taking time. It's not that easy when you want to do that one, because what you are seeing is only a tip of iceberg. When you start working that, it is going to be huge effort that you'll have to put, and this is going to be done across the organization, and you need to ensure that every activity is taken care here wherever PII is going to be. When we are going to have more PII, that we are going to have more activities are there. This is the tool. You may look that as, by look, it is very simple, but this is going to be very effective, which is going to tell us where PII is used. So the moment we know that these are the three controls that we have, these are the three controls that we have, then we will be focusing on these controls when we are coming out with the application. So you will see that how we are going to take care of that. So most of the controls, either by design, by default, or by process, you are going to have the control, right? So that's how we are going to do that. And if it is not there, any of these three, then you are going to say that's a gap. Then you are going to see where we can build in, whether it should be part of the design or default or process. That's how we are going to do that one. Okay, so this is the first one, and this is a major job that we'll be doing as part of that. Next one, this is what I was talking about. So whenever this is some sample data, I picked it so that we can visualize what we want to do. Suppose this is the employee data that we have. Now this employee data, this is going to be the identifier, what we talk. This is, and this is identifier, and then you have other things. This is also something which is going to be second level. So from this, you should be in a position to identify who's that. And there are certain things when you are going to be given only with the address and city, it has no meaning at all. The secondary one. So that is how when you are going to, when you need people who are, say something like this in your organization, tell me how many people are living in this city. So you are going to city wise, you are going to give the count. That is a process. So when you are going to, when somebody is asking that I need city wise count for employees who are working in that, or patients that you have come to your hospital. So if that is going to be the request that is coming, then I'm going to count on this, and that number that I'm going to give, that should be based on the area, the city. Now that has no PII as part of that. So in that case, that process is a valid path, and that is what is something. So when somebody is asking that, give me all the email IDs of whom have a particular disease I want to contact, then it is going to, without consent, you cannot give that one. So that decision you will have to take depending on, that's what I said, the rows are going to be these, which is when I'm going to filter this, when I'm going to say, let me put it this way. I'm going to apply a filter, and then I'll tell you what we have discussed earlier. Now, I say that somebody is wanting that I want only people from say a particular, say in this ward. So this is the people I want. So I have only these people. This is one way of filtering. The other way of filter that I can ask for is I need people. I need the information only this name and the city, name and city. That is what I'm interested. Or I may say that I need only the email and email ID and the country that I want. So if that is the case, you are actually filtering on the columns. That is, and the combination is going to be some area like this. This is what you are going to pick. So every process when it is going to be done, you may be having lakhs of records. You may be having hundreds of columns, attributes. But for that particular process, you want only these columns and you want only these rows. And only this data should be given to the processor. That is how we are going to do. That's why before enter in Excel where you roughly process or by which tool plan company. No, I don't get what is the question there. Somebody's asked. This is purely done on Excel. If you're talking about this is purely done on Excel, the template which I come out and then we use this and this was working. It is workable. What you see here is actual data which was used in one organization where they wanted to go for PIMS implemented. So we started with this and then we identify all the activities and then we could be in a position to identify all the controls that are already there and the controls that are not there. So we did that one. Hope I answered your question. That's what you are asking. Probably. Okay, we'll see some of the templates and see that that's going to help us or not. Okay. Now in this one, this is a breach register. When a breach has happened, you need to maintain a log. This is a breach log rather. So when I'm going to have a series number, then each breach ID should have an ID so that you can refer in future. You can refer that one. You're going to talk about the description of that, on which date it has happened, time, who has reported it, what is the nature of that, which are the principals who are affected by that, then data that is breached, what data that is breached, and whether any processor or third party involved in that one, and what is the current status. Okay, so when the things are over, you can close that, so that easy way to filter that one. The other side, what are the consequences that are there which you have identified? On the other part of that, what are the measures that you have taken or you are going to take? So whether you have initiated a PAA for that one, whether the principals have been informed. We see that right today also we have seen whenever a incident happen, the first thing that you need to do is PAA principals are to be informed and supervisory authority has to be informed. So whether that thing is done or not, regulator, sometimes it is going to be regulator who has to be informed, government or some other regulator, or what type of mitigation that you have for that one. So when the mitigation is done, that means you sort of minimize that effort or you remove that one. So every breach that is happening as part of that. When you talk about breach, it is not that you lost the data. It can also be non-availability of the data. When a principal is coming to you and then she's asking, this is the information that I want. So I visited one of the hospitals. So you are a hospital man, you are running a hospital management, you have data of all your patients. One of the patient comes and then she asks, like I visited sometime 2 years back, I came and said there are certain records available. I need to know a particular treatment that was given for me. I need to know about that. So if that is there, then you are that is a request that has come from the patient and you are trying to get that data, but you are not in a position to identify that. That means there is a problem there. So that is related to data integrity issues. And that is also an incident here. So when you say breach, it is also going to be that breach is not always that somebody is going to stolen or only that. Anything that is going to affect a CAA, you will have to consider that as part of that. Then the next, so that is a breach register. You are going to continuously have this one and see that how we can. And when you analyze that, you will know. Why do you want to have a log for that? Because at the end of the year or every 6 months once, you are going to look into that and then see what type of, you can add columns here. So when you say nature, this is going to be a type. So I'm going to group on that and then see which type of breach which is happening continuously again and again. That means there is a problem there. So by doing this trend analysis over a period of time, I should be in a position to identify some opportunities for improvement so that I can implement. so that I can strengthen my process. That is also going to be useful. For that also, this register log is going to be useful. The next one, what we have is the PII report. PII report is you are conducting assessment. You remember the PII yesterday we were talking about, right? Privacy impact assessment. So when you are going to assess the impact, you are going to report that. How are we going to report? So you are going to talk about what processes that are getting affected. You're going to describe that. What is a potential risk, area of risk, and then you are going to quantify them. You are going to quantify the likelihood, quantify the severity, and the product of that is going to be the risk value. So for one PII, you are going to give a lengthy list because you are going to see all type of things that are going to be there. That is the thing. What process, the processes that are impacted by that particular risk. And then what is a potential area of the risk here? Likelihood of harm. What type of harm that would have possible there, or it is already there? And what is the severity of the harm? So you are going to grade it from 1 to 10 scale, and then the product of that is going to be the risk value. Now this risk value is going to tell where we'll have to focus because of this. That is a PII report, what we talk about. You can change that, modify. There is no mandate here because based on your thing, you can change that also. Okay, consent form, it is a common one. So it's a consent, like when you say that you are going to use some information, what is given by the data principal, for what purpose you are going to use that. So the data, so you are going to say that these are the purposes for which, so the consent is given by the data principal here. My name, and then this by for the medical university, I give the consent that these information, whatever is mentioned here, can be used for these purposes. I am aware that these are the things there, and there is always going to be a withdrawal. If I want to withdraw that, I can make use of that. Till that time, I give this consent to them on data. This is how the consent form has to be done, depending on whatever you want to do. That this is how it is there. You are going to talk about who is the person who is going to give the consent, what are the PII information or normal information that you have from the data principal, for what purpose you are allowing them to use that one. And you're also going to say you are aware of that. It is at any point, if you do not want that to continue, you can withdraw that, and you know the process also how to withdraw that, and you are going to sign and date. And so this is how you will be getting the consent. Okay, so that you can frame it based on your example, like how you want to do that one. Okay, now the next one is sometimes when you have a kid cannot give their consent. Kid is less than minor, any minor. In that cases, you can see a parent or whoever is going to be there. So they can give a consent. So this is going to be there. You are going to say who is that a relationship, and then you are going to say on behalf of that kid or child, you are going to give a consent. It is also similar to that. Again, same thing is there. Here instead of kid, you are going to give, parent is going to give, and these are the information that is going to be given. And that can be, you are allowing them to use for these purposes, and you also know that how to withdraw that one. Same thing is going to be given. So similar case. The last one what we have is a privacy note. This you have seen most of the cases. These are things so similar to what we have seen that. So what is that? So these are the questions that are there. Now why you need to know, like why these things are collected. What is the reason why they are collecting it? Who is collecting this? How it is collected? Why is it being? So you need to know all these. This is what is the right any data principal has. The example can be like this. When I'm going to say that this is the same thing, similar what we have seen earlier. So privacy notice, you are going to say that this from time being, I would like to contact you with the details. So this is a note sent by the organization to the data principal, and you are making him to accept it, making him or her to accept it. Consent form is always given by the data principal to the organization. So that's what I have. So I think that is what I have for today, because most of the things we covered yesterday, because the entire compliance part we covered yesterday. And then this is a huge area, as I said, if we keep on talking. And as I said, there are 7 things that I've introduced as part of this session that we had yesterday and today. And each of that is actually a 4-day or 5-day program that we normally do. But I just want to give an introduction to you people so that you will know that what is available and how you can extend it, how we can apply that to your area.